everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be continuing my physical TBR journey where I read through my entire physical TBR and try and unhaul as many books as possible. So today I'm going to be reading a couple of books by Gillian Flynn. If you don't know, she's a thriller author who wrote Gone Girl, which was a really popular book and was turned into a movie. So I read that in 2023, I think, and I really enjoyed it. It was a crazy story and was very well written, and it's just a crazy book. But I'm someone that really depends on setting a lot, and I did not love the setting, and it's definitely not one of my favorite books, but I can really appreciate that it was a great book. So I saw two more of her books at like a library sale, and they were like 50 cents each, so I thought, why not? So today we're going to be reading those. Let's get into it. So the first book I read was Sharp Objects. This follows a woman who has moved out of her small Missouri town to Chicago, where she's a reporter, and her boss finds out there's been a second murder which seemed very similar to a murder that happened last year back in her hometown. So he sends her there to kind of track it down, wants the interesting story about this woman who was from the town reporting on it. So she goes back and tries to kind of make sense of things. She is not on good terms with her family, is really not looking forward to being back there. So it was really interesting kind of seeing that all unfold. I ended up loving this book. It is a 5-star for me. It has become one of my favorites. I really, really loved it. So I immediately, when I started reading it, it reminded me very much of Longlegs, which I don't know if you guys have seen. It's like a thriller. It stars Nicolas Cage. Very similar kind of vibe, very similar feel. The main characters remind me of each other very similarly. The plot kind of plays out in a similar way. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie, and if you liked that, then trust me and read this. It was so good, very similar, and this book is very gritty and kind of dark, I would say, in a very similar way that Longlegs was. I wasn't necessarily on the edge of my seat, I wasn't super scared, but the tension was really interesting. I will say, after reading this and the rest of the books in this video, but I started with this, she is a phenomenal writer. Her writing is beautiful. It's like prose, but dark almost. She has such interesting imagery and descriptions and metaphors, and there was so much stuff that I just wanted to highlight. And I mean, the first page, I remember at the very beginning, there's a line about the editor and where his office is, and she was talking about that he looks out onto the tree trunk and that successful editors look out onto the leaves. The imagery and the way that she writes and describes things is just so incredible. So I really, really enjoyed that. One of the notes I have is that the setting wasn't too unbearable, because this is set in like a small middle America town, which I usually hate. But I think it's a testament to Gillian's writing that I didn't hate it, and she made it seem really interesting and kind of portrayed the grittiness and character of the town without making it too, I don't know, inaccessible, I would say. But it was a really interesting story. The twists and turns, as always with her books, were phenomenal. I will say it was a little bit predictable. I kind of thought I could see where we were going a long time before we got there. There was a twist that made it so I was like half right, but even still. So I do think it lost a little bit of rereadability for me, because I was able to read knowing that was going to happen. But the beautiful writing, the descriptions, the character development was just so interesting that it didn't bother me at all, and the way we got there was still really fascinating. We also see her kind of interact with a out-of-state detective, and their relationship was really interesting, kind of how broken people meet each other and how they interact with each other. I also will say that her kind of, the way she's broken, which sounds terrible, is super, super interesting to me. Her family dynamic with her mum and her sister, so interesting. Her coping mechanism for that, how it all develops, how it plays into her relationships and her story, super interesting. So I wouldn't have expected that at all. It's nothing I've ever read about, but yeah, I loved reading about that. It was very interesting. And I think one of the things I've been loving about thrillers recently, because I've been reading a lot of Lisa Jewell, her characters are so fleshed out and feel like such real people. This did as well, but in a very different way, and it doesn't feel like someone you could know. Like, it still feels a little bit removed, but it's such depth to the character that I really appreciated. I feel like I'm just going around in circles, because it's such a great book, and I don't really have much more to say than the writing was incredible. But yeah, she just picks strange details to kind of paint the scene, and it's very unexpected stuff that she describes that immerses you more than you would expect. But I love this book. It was a strong 5-star. I would highly recommend it to anyone who has read any of her work or who likes thrillers. I've now read everything she's written, and this is still my favourite. I still think it's the best one. And this is her debut, which is insane. So I don't know what happened to her, Miss Gillian Flynn. I hope someone is paying for your therapy, because good lord, let's check on her. Let's make sure she's okay. The next book I read was Dark Places, which follows Libby, whose entire family was murdered when she was a child. She was the only one to escape, and her brother is convicted of the murders. So that's an insane place to start. And then she gets contacted by these murder club people who are really interested in the story and want to free her brother. And she kind of gets roped into it. They pay her to interview people, they pay her for notes and stuff. She sells kind of family memorabilia. So it was a really interesting concept to have this like murder club kind of true crime convention thing. You don't really see that a lot kind of integrated the way it was here, and I think it was really interesting and well done to see her interacting with that. So we're flashing between the past and the present, where we were seeing everything that happened the day of the murders from her brother's perspective, from her mother's perspective, and kind of tying those together to paint the picture of where the family was at, what happened, why he did it, all that kind of stuff. And then she is going through and interviewing all these people that were around then, kind of trying to get to the bottom of it, because she would love to believe that her brother's innocent but doesn't. And just kind of, putting all the pieces together. It was also really interesting because she had not confronted any of that at all. It was kind of just tucked away. So it was really interesting seeing her, walk back through her life and with people who thought that she was so wrong and thought that they knew her brother better than her, and which is really judgmental and horrible to her almost. It was really interesting watching that dynamic, and she was such a fun character. I really enjoyed Libby. She was very snappy, kind of very self-aware and very hardened almost. She's just, I don't know, she was pretty lazy and just accepted that stuff about herself. Was like, yeah, I can't be arsed, I'm not doing it. And I was like, yeah, fair enough, respect it. But she was really funny, and I really enjoyed her character, and seeing her interact with this whole world and all the other characters was a lot of fun. Especially one of the murder club people who kind of introduced her. Their relationship was a lot of fun, and them kind of becoming friends, and it was kind of the first friend that she's had, and that was really interesting. He's pretty awkward too, so it was a fun relationship to watch unfold. Very similar to Sharp Objects, so many interesting lines that she chooses to write about. It's such a random detail, but it paints the picture so beautifully, and it was also just a crazy interesting mystery and unfolding everything and seeing the missing pieces and everything kind of slotting together. That was a lot of fun. It also has the dual perspectives and dual timelines, which I always love, so that was a massive plus for me. And the twists and turns, as always with her books, are fantastic. I do think as well with this one, I kind of predicted a little bit of what was going to happen, which I don't know if that's this book, it was more intentional, because you're supposed to be speculating along with it. That's, we're watching the detective unfold it, but I don't know, I don't think it's a bad thing that it's a smidge predictable, because I think the way we get there is the craziest thing you'll ever read. It was also really interesting seeing kind of the parallels between Libby and other characters and how that unfolded, where Libby as a child was kind of coached into testifying against Ben, and very similar parallels with other characters and other situations. I don't want to say too much to spoil, but it was really interesting kind of seeing these completely different people almost on opposite sides of things being treated very similarly. And it was a lot of fun, not a lot of fun, but very interesting seeing the differences between a child's understanding and an adult's. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but the day of the murders, there's a lot going on for Libby's mum. There's crazy stuff is going on, and she is kind of fighting fires on all fronts. And we read from Libby's point of view and what she remembers from that day. And it's very different, and what she was told. And it was kind of an interesting commentary on how much kids perceive, that they perceive more than we expect, but that they can also be so out of the loop. And I don't know, just her kind of coming to terms with that as well and realising how much she didn't know, and a lot of that was because she blocked it out, but I found that really interesting to kind of see her learning all this stuff and putting together these pieces. And it was also fun because everyone else knew so much more about her life and her family than she did. I will say as well, the murders, and there was some satanic cult stuff that happened, that was ridiculously detailed and gory. I found that very hard to read. Which I think, again, is a credit to the writer, but just a little warning, it's a little bit gory, but it was a dark book. I know I said that I kind of saw it coming, but the ending did have a lot to it that I didn't expect. I think at the beginning I kind of had a loose theory, because you always do, and then I was like, never mind, and then it kind of, a little part of that tied in, but the ending was mental, and I think She is so clever in how she ties everything together and wraps everything up, and I do also love how quickly things escalate with her. I think it's really fun because you'll get a very calm scene or a very tense scene that hits the fan, and I think that's a lot of fun to explore and it's a lot of fun to read, so she does that really well. And was some hard reading at times. To read about children doing this, I think, was just very difficult, and seeing children involved in it, it was, you know, it's hard to think about that and think about what your life would be like and what these people's lives would have been like if this hadn't happened to them. And it was also interesting seeing how they turned out, how the side characters turned out, because we see a lot of them as children and then as Libby meets them as they've grown up. So that was a really interesting kind of nod, but it definitely makes you wonder, and a lot of wondering happens from the characters about what would have happened if this horrific thing or hadn't happened to me. So I did enjoy that they kind of explored that a little bit. I thoroughly enjoyed both of those books. They were phenomenal. The Dark Places I gave 4 stars, so it was incredible, but it's definitely very dark. There's some gory stuff, especially in Dark Places, and I mean, obviously it's called Dark Places, but it's hard reading about all that stuff, and I think it does kind of wear on you, especially because you're so interested in it, but they feel too much like real people and it feels too plausible. I think that is something with her settings, is that it does feel very real, which is tricky. But yeah, I knew she had one other book and I was like, okay, after reading those, I have to read that. But I was like, I need a break to read some lighter stuff. But I looked at it yesterday and it was only 60 pages as a short story. So I'm like, okay, I might as well just finish that off, and I will have read all of her books. So this book is called The Grownup. It's a short story about a woman who is like a professional con artist, I guess. She has been demoted from one of her jobs to now being a psychic, and she meets this woman who she goes to like swindle, and the woman has some issues with her stepson, and the stepson is like haunting the house, and so the woman goes to her house to kind of perform, you know, cleansing of the house, and she's kind of getting caught between, is the son manipulating her or is the mother manipulating her, and kind of ties all together. I won't give too much away because it's very short and I think it was a really interesting read, but it wasn't, I gave it 3 stars. It was enjoyable, it was a nice quick read, and obviously it doesn't pack the same punch as a full novel. It was 60 pages, but still get the weird characters, the crazy plot twists that you don't expect coming, everything, you know, ramping up. Very similar to what I've talked about. Gillian Flynn has definitely found a good formula and a good way of doing things, and she's kind of stuck to it. But yeah, I'm a bit lost for words, honestly. These were some crazy books and I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I would highly recommend both of them. I would also recommend Gone Girl. I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much as either of these two, but I really still did enjoy it. And yeah, if you haven't read any of her stuff and you like thrillers or horror, I would definitely check it out. That being said, I am going to unhaul both of them. This one, Dark Places, I don't think I will reread, to be honest. It was a bit dark for me. Not that that's a bad thing, and I'm not sad I read it. I just don't think I will get a lot out of rereading it, but maybe I will, I don't know. But I don't think I need the physical copy to hang on to just in case someone else can enjoy it. And then Sharp Objects, I was kind of tempted to keep, but it's kind of a bashed up copy and I don't love the cover, which is not a great reason, but you know. But I also think if I'm going to reread this, I could get it on my Kindle or I could borrow it from the library, so I think that's what I'll do. But yeah, they're definitely phenomenal books. Yeah. As you can see, I don't have coherent thoughts on these. They're just books that were, yeah, they've blown my mind a little bit. That is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed as we went through 2 more of my physical TBR books and ticked them off and unhauled them. Yeah, I know my thoughts weren't super coherent for a lot of this, so I apologize if it was a bit rambly, but I think my brain is still a little bit fried and blown from all of these crazy characters and stories. Yeah, they're phenomenal books. She's a very incredibly talented writer, and I would highly recommend all of her novels, but especially Sharp Objects. But just be warned, it's gonna affect you a little bit. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, consider hitting like or subscribing to join me as I continue to read through my physical TBR, and leave me a comment down below letting me know if you have read any of her books and which one's your favorite, or if you have any recommendations of kind of similar stuff. So thanks guys, hope to see you in another video soon. Bye!